Hello everybody, Pastor Dan here. I hope you are all doing well and hanging in there in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. This video is a bit of a church business update to keep you all posted on what's going on with the church, how we're doing financially, how we're preparing to reopen when the time comes to do so, and just some other general business concerns that the church council and I are having to navigate in this time when we can't all meet together as a congregation. First, I want to say thank you so much for sticking with us through all of this, for hanging in there and pressing on, for being the church, even from a distance. This has been an incredibly difficult time for everyone, but we are moving forward. And personally, I am incredibly optimistic for what the future holds for our church. Before we get to all the business stuff, though, I just want to give you a quick update on how God has been at work in our community through this season. As you are hopefully all aware by now, we've moved our worship services online to our website, brockportfirstbaptist.org. And we have seen tremendous growth in viewership and the overall reach of our church through these online services. We have heard from people in other states, folks from other churches that aren't able to offer online church services, former members of our church, people who have maybe gotten disconnected somewhere along the way, many of our shut-ins, and even a few folks who have connected with us for the very first time through these online services. What's amazing to me is not only are we still able to worship together online, but God is at work and our message is getting out there to a ton of new people who weren't even aware of us before. We've also seen massive growth in our online social media presence in this season, especially on Facebook. We've been doing live Q&A videos just about every week on Facebook and trying to post multiple times throughout the week on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our marketing intern, Thomas, who's been helping us with all of that. Huge help there. And all of that posting and activity is translating into exponential growth in our reach to new people on those platforms. We've also got some great new ministries that have launched in this season, and I'm very excited about this stuff. We have a weekly prayer group that's been meeting on Zoom Mondays at 3 p.m. That has been just a fantastic time to check in with each other, catch up, and of course, pray for each other. We launched a small group that's meeting on Zoom every Thursday evening. That's doing very well and growing. And we've even launched a young adult ministry that meets online on Friday nights. It's just full of energy, enormous potential there as we think about, what ministry in our little college town might look like going forward. So God is good, the Spirit is at work, and a lot of very exciting stuff is happening even in this otherwise very difficult and frustrating time. Now, in terms of finances, we are hanging in there. A lot of other churches are in real dire straits right now, but we are incredibly blessed to have a core group of dedicated givers who are able to continue supporting our ministries through this season. We've also received a number of first-time gifts, and we've also seen many more people giving online, both of which probably have something to do with our expanded reach and the move to a virtual church format, or virch, as some people are calling it. And our operating costs are also down right now, which helps a lot. So while our giving is definitely lower than it would normally be right now, that dip has so far been offset by a decline in expenses and these gifts from first-time givers. And that has basically allowed us to break even. So praise God for that. And I want to give a big thank you to everyone who's been able to continue supporting our church through this time. We could not do what we're doing without you. I also want to acknowledge that this is a really tough time for a whole lot of people. There's a lot of economic hardship and anxiety right now. Folks have lost their jobs, businesses are threatened, investments have taken a major hit. And so if you're not able to give right now, that is totally okay. There is no need to feel shame or guilt about that. Our ability to give and to support ministries and causes that we care about often ebbs and flows with our season of life, and this is one of those seasons for many of us. So I just want to relieve any pressure, any weight on your shoulders. If this happens to be a season where you are unable to support our church financially, that is totally okay, and we are doing okay. Now, while overall giving is down, we have good news on the pledge front. We received 37 pledge cards this year. That's higher than any of our recent years, going back at least like 5 years or so, and it's up from 33 pledges we received last year. We got 37 this year, 33 last year, so that's some growth there. And the pledges we've gotten total just over $105,000, which is a 9% increase over last year's pledges. So that is an incredible blessing, and it bodes well for the financial health and stability of our church moving forward, especially long-term once things return to normal. We've also seen an increase in pledges toward our roof fund, and we're only about $700 under the total expense for the roof on the year in terms of our pledges. So that's fantastic news. Thank you to everyone who submitted a pledge card for your ongoing faithful support of our church. In terms of other church business, we would normally have a congregational business meeting right around now, sometime in May, to vote on a new budget and to elect new members to council. But of course, due to everything that's happening right now with the shutdown and the virus and the need to protect especially our more vulnerable members, the church council has decided not to hold our May meeting. So that meeting is not happening. Now, a congregational meeting will be scheduled once we're able to safely meet as a large group again. That could be a while. And if this continues to stretch on, we might explore some sort of virtual congregational meeting. But for now, the council has approved a preliminary budget that's going to see us through this period, which will be discussed and voted on officially by the congregation once we're all able to meet together again in person. The budget that's been approved by council is basically a copy of last year's budget. In fact, we're essentially freezing spending at last year's levels. And this time especially, we feel like that is the fiscally responsible thing to do. And that means that the budget you all approved last year is pretty much the same, or at least very similar to the budget we'll be working with in this new fiscal year. Now, for those who are members of our church, you should be receiving an email in the coming weeks with a copy of the new budget so that you can see that. If you don't receive that in the next week or two, or if you need a paper copy of the budget mailed to your home address, please contact the church office and let us know. As for new council members, we have 2 members of council whose terms are coming to an end: Martha Klasquin, our discipleship coordinator, and Julie Pruss, our church life coordinator. Both Julie and Martha will not be seeking an additional term at this time, but they have also both agreed to remain in place through this transition until we can be back together again to vote on new council members and get them situated with their areas of ministry. Now, that could change, again, if this stretches on, and the Constitution of our church does give council the power to replace members in lieu of a congregational vote. But we're not at this point. We're not at that point yet. So for the time being, Martha and Julie will be staying on council. And then as for the annual report that normally comes out right about now, we're also putting that on hold until the fall. And our hope is that we'll have that available at our September congregational meeting if we're able to meet in person by then. And that brings me to our plan for reopening the church. As of the recording of this video, New York State is still under a statewide stay-at-home order until May 15th. And it's my hope that any day now, the governor and local officials are going to release their plan for a phased reopening of our state. We are eagerly awaiting those guidelines. The council will be using them as we plan our own reopening procedure for the church, and we will definitely be abiding by those guidelines. I'm not willing to put any of you at risk. The last thing I want is for someone in our congregation to get sick because they came to church. That would be terrible, and as your pastor, I'm not going to do that to you. And because of that, I want to level with you all and talk very seriously and realistically about what we could be looking at moving forward. If you're following the news at all, you know that most states have started to, or not most states, you know that in most of the states that have started to reopen, they're doing it in phases. And if you've seen any of these reopening plans, you'll notice that in most cases, people over the age of 60 are advised to avoid large gatherings of people until usually the very last stage of the reopening plan. And here's the thing. With the demographic makeup of our church, if it's not safe for our members over the age 60 to be in large groups, I don't personally think it makes much sense for us to be meeting together in person for worship. To me, it would make a lot more sense if the majority of our congregation can't even be in worship safely. It would make way more sense to keep our services online for the time being and roll out other opportunities for smaller in-person group activities, especially geared toward some of our less vulnerable members. Now, I have no idea what that's going to look like. Nobody does. I think it's entirely possible that we could be back together for worship by late summer with safety measures and some form of distancing precautions in place, of course. But I think that late summer is a good best case scenario for when we could get there. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm praying for. And I really want to encourage all of you to pray for that as well. But there's also a worst case scenario that we need to at least be prepared for. And what that looks like, at least in my imagination, is I could see this phased reopening stretching through the summer, maybe even into the fall. Which means that for the bulk of our congregation, worshiping in person might not be an option for the rest of the summer. And then once we do get through all that, we could end up in the fall, be back to normal, quote unquote, and then get hit with this virus again. So in that worst case scenario, it's foreseeable that it could be many, many more months before we're able to worship together regularly in person. Now, I'm hoping for the best. I'm aiming for that, late summer date, but we need to be prepared for the worst. We'll be able to start putting together an actual plan and strategy once reopening procedures are released by the state. The council will be meeting soon after those guidelines come out to review them together and begin working on a plan. That plan is going to include what it looks like to worship together safely with social distancing procedures, how to maintain some sort of online presence even once we start worshiping together in person so that folks who don't feel safe leaving home can still join and be part of that. It's also going to include what smaller in-person ministries and activities can take place in person, and what capacity and what the strategy will be for our church to achieve our mission and actually be the church outside the walls of the church building as we reopen and move forward. That's going to be a ton of decision making, but I am confident that if we adhere to the state guidelines and exercise wisdom and a lot of prayer, we can be back together again in person as soon as is safely possible. In the meantime, I hope you'll continue to stay connected to our church online. Worship with us virtually on the church website. Services are posted every Sunday morning at 10 a.m., and they stay on the church website for the entire week. So if you can't watch Sunday at 10, you can come back later in the week and catch up. Also, please be following us on social media, especially Facebook and YouTube, and be sure to share our posts and the online services with a friend so that we can be getting on more and more people's radar at this time. Keep an eye out for that email in the coming weeks that's going to have the new budget attached, and let us know if you need a paper copy of that. And if you're interested in being of assistance as we start to plan our reopening, especially if you have any training or experience in organization and planning, please reach out to the church and let us know. We will probably, most likely, be assembling teams to plan for different elements of reopening, so maybe you can get on one of those teams and help out. And of course, if you're able in this season, please continue to support the work of our church by giving. You can give online through PayPal at brockportfirstbaptist.org/give. You can also mail us a check or give through your bank's bill pay service, which saves us from paying the service fees charged by PayPal. And again, any way that you're able to help through this very difficult time is hugely appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you found it clear and helpful. Please reach out to us if you have questions, concerns, and especially if you need assistance. We are here to help. Grace and peace in the meantime, and I hope to see you all in person very, very soon.